and smart about fighting crime. I think I will work closer with the Lincoln Police Department. At the present time, I think that there is a general feeling that the service by the County Attorney's Office to the Lincoln Police Department in one area is deficient. That is when generally, whether I learned it at Quantico or at the State Patrol or in my trial work, both as a criminal defense lawyer as well as in prosecutions, that if you have time, you need a warrant. It helps you both in the criminal process and to defend against any claims of civil rights violations. At the present time and for the last several years, the County Attorney's Office has not provided timely assistance to the Lincoln Police Department, even in murder cases, for warrants. Many concerns from the Lincoln Police Department stem from arresting on broadcast as opposed to warrants. And the partnership needs to be there. And I mention that in the sense that one voice can certainly change a room or change a county, as we recently noticed with the Crime Stoppers tip that led to this massive recovery and destruction of a major marijuana manufacturing process. So it's one of those issues that I think that needs to be done. And where do we find the funds? Sometimes I think my background as having set up a successful law firm that has a statewide practice will help us when those invariable budget cuts come down the road. Just a few weeks I had lunch with Senator Flood, along with other people who in Senator Flood indicated the next budget will see a deficit in the neighborhood of $600 million to $1 billion. Some of that will impact county government. I think the general consensus is that property taxes are too high, and the county attorney's budget has doubled in the last 10 years. There are some, for instance, the law says that the chief deputy, you may have a chief deputy, meaning you can decide. Many private companies, large ones, Eli Lilly, Starbucks, and others, done away with the second in command with the idea that the CEO really needs to be at the base of the operations and closer. So we may not be able to afford the chief deputy's position. So those are some of the changes. I think diversity training as part of the Asian Cultural Center, and Barb is a member of the school board, you know that at most of our schools, anywhere from 20 to 45 languages are being spoken. And the police department has a pretty involved cultural and diversity training, as do judges across the state. Just several months ago, Mr. Lacey announced that at a Color of Justice forum that there is no cultural or diversity training in the county attorney's office, and he couldn't promise it, but he would look into it. So that's another thing that I plan to initiate immediately within the county attorney's office is diversity and cultural training. And the last one is, I think, a public report. I think that I will stand on the results if elected. There needs to be kind of a state of the county attorney's address or small pamphlet which indicates where the taxpayer funds are going by way of how many cases were filed, how many were plea bargained, how many were convictions, how many juvenile cases and civil cases. So it's not a book. It is really a pamphlet. So each member of the community can evaluate and I will stand again on those records. The last change, I think, that I'll mention and then proceed with other questions is I'll use, if elected, I plan to address schools and other organizations. I think that in the downturn in the economy that students need to be reminded that criminal offenses, whether it's drunk driving or minor in possession or assault, have serious implications in their employability and the amount they pay, whether for the public defender or for another lawyer to represent them. I had an interesting conversation with Sim Reynolds from the Mothers Against Drunk Driving. And for instance, take drunk driving. It is estimated that a person drives under the influence of alcohol, which in every case, a drunk driving case can be dangerous, deadly, and it's always a serious criminal offense. That people before, when they are first arrested, they have already driven drunk hundreds of times. So we need to go out to the schools, need to go out to whether neighborhood associations and others and say, you know, this is an issue. We need to be safe on our streets and secure in our homes. So I'll use it as as an invitation to the community to let them know what's going on in the community, and hopefully we can be responsive. It's not only to prosecute crime, it is really to join a partnership with the police to prevent crime, to reduce crime, to think of alternatives to incarceration. Just because we build a $55 million jail doesn't mean our sole objective should be to fill it.
Oh, that sounds very good. Well, as you have mentioned, one of the main roles of a county attorney's office is prosecution of crime. And one of the most damaging crimes actually to society, and sometimes actually results in murder, is domestic violence. It happens in the home. Do you have any ideas or approaches on how you can go and more effectively prosecute those kinds of crimes that occur in domestic violence situations?
Well, I think you're right in that it's certainly a dynamic. The issue so often with domestic violence is that it is a legacy sort of crime that can continue generation to generation. Son sees father or mother, and it continues. They assume that that's the norm. So we have a delicate situation, but it is something that can carry on and on and on. You know, in that situation, I would tell you we would again start with the Lincoln Police or the Sheriff's Office or the State Patrol or any of those organizations that are asked to step in. If you look at that, you know, probably the quickest intervention, say by a police officer, they're really the only ones in the criminal justice system that are expected to be perfect. You know, when they come to a domestic violence situation, they are intended to be a peacekeeper, a counselor, a mental health professional, and then the restorer of peace. It's kind of like when they come to an accident situation, they're supposed to provide emergency medical care, get the stories of everyone, and the last thing is to be a reconstructionist. So certainly the police response is important. Whether admissions or confessions, that's really an opportunity. But you're right, it does take a tough stance. I think in many of these instances that we will certainly ask, in the right case, for the highest amount of bail, and certainly for the highest amount of the sentencing in terms of sending a message to the community. And oftentimes that's what courts can be for those unusual sorts of crimes or unusual sorts of incidents because they are violent. The court sentence itself will send a message to the community. We have a rash of home invasions going on also, usually targeted to the elderly, where violent sexual assaults, usually the husband is pistol whipped and the wife is sexually assaulted. Though that conduct should not be tolerated in a civilized society. So we would ask for the maximum amount of bail in the event there's a conviction, that a sentence commensurate with that. We would not remain silent or mute at the time of at the hearing, but really to impress upon the court how serious this is, and again, to break the cycle of violence. In some of those situations, they all work together, though. I think, for instance, on the child support, we can do so much better in terms of child support, and it's not to say that that's the only cause, but oftentimes when there's little money, it doesn't justify, it doesn't excuse it, but if it is more predictable, it takes a certain amount of the pressures away from that. So I think we can do more. I think people, again, need to feel safe on the streets and secure in their homes, and domestic violence is certainly one that needs to be broken. In this generation, again, we not only prosecute crime, but we look to reduce it and reduce the level of recidivism.